Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today, special guest Karen Stewart, who is a client success consultant at BELAY Virtual Assistants. And Karen, you and I have worked together now 6 months now. Has it been 6 months, 8 months?
It's been about 6 months. That's right.
Yeah. So as listeners of the podcast know, about 6 or 8 months ago, I met BELAY at two different conferences. We met at the Genius Network event with Joe Polish, and then at Dave Ramsey's leadership conference. And I thought, all right, twice in like 6 weeks, that's a sign. I was in need of a new virtual assistant. And now I ended up working with BELAY, and it's been 6 months. But Karen, your role is multifaceted at BELAY. It's not just like you call BELAY and they say like, well, here's the next person that pops up on the list. You and I did a lot of work together saying, hey, who's going to be the right fit? So tell us a little bit about that, how you find the right fit for somebody. And for our listeners, I want you to also listen and say, if I'm trying to find my own virtual assistant, make sure I'm going through the same process.
Thanks, Matthew. So even our fit was not by chance. It's very intentional.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we have someone actually match the client with the CSE. So I like to think I got you because you're really cool, and maybe I'm a little cool, but no.
Totally.
So we're matched. I get to know you really well, do a Zoom call, and get to know you personally on a personal level. So those hard skills that you need are just as important as the soft skills and the personality. So I look for expertise and specifically what Matthew needs, but then also just personality. What are you looking for? Are you looking for somebody laid back or, somebody super proactive, which we hope all our VAs are, but
Sure.
It's just that personality match when I get to know you, get to know about your family, and then make that match. And we have some great matching tools at BELAY that really helps us make a good match too.
That's a really good point. I guess that those are things, I'm always surprised when I learn things I never thought of, right? So when I thought of a virtual assistant, I thought, well, they just need to get things done. But then I guess to your point, Karen, I'm going to be talking to this person every single week, probably multiple times a week. And if there's something about them that grates me or doesn't get me excited, or just our personalities don't align, that's not going to work. So it sounds like for those hiring a virtual assistant, if you're not excited to hear from this person, like if you're like, hey, I really enjoy this. So Zach, my EA that I've worked with for the last 6 months, and I every time I see his name on my phone, I'm like, oh, it's Zach, dude. We're going to have a fun chat. He's going to tell me about his family and his dog and what he's working on and his music projects. And we're going to get caught up, and then we're going to jump into things. Do you see it sometimes? So what happens if the match doesn't line up? Karen,
so let me just say, I love everything you just said, because if you're not excited about working with this person, like you just took the words right out of my mouth. So when I talked to you the first time, I said, what would not work? Like what personality is going to bug you? And at the same time, I say, what works really well? Tell me somebody you partner really well with. It's just making that match where you actually want to work with them and you get excited about working with them. When it doesn't work, Matthew, I will say we have a really good success rate of matching. But if it doesn't work, that's where I really come in. So if you're having an issue, and I'm going to check up with you a lot in the beginning just to see how things are going. If I feel that this match is not working and you're not excited, even if you're lukewarm, I'm going to expedite a transition to find somebody that's going to make you super excited about working with this person. If that has to happen, BELAY actually pays for that training of that person coming on. So it's not like you're retraining somebody and you're having to pay for it. We're quick at transitioning if we do not feel our clients are super excited about who they're working with.
No, that really speaks a lot. And it kind of ties to something similar that you and I ran into when we first started working together, which is I think if I'm going to go find an EA on my own and I go through putting an ad wherever and I'm interviewing people, one, that's not really my personality type. So I'm going to run out of patience before I find the right person. But when you and I first started working together, we had gone down this process. You had identified somebody within BELAY, and then at the last minute, they had something come up, a family emergency, and weren't taking on new clients. And you were very gracious about it. You said, boy, I'm really sorry this happened. And I'm thinking, this is exactly why I'm working with BELAY, because if I had been doing this on my own, I would have said, wait, this person wouldn't have worked. I don't know, maybe I'll just quit, or maybe I'll hire whoever was next on my list. But you guys had a whole candidate slate full of those.
Yeah, and you had so much grace because I remember getting that email. I think it was like a few hours before we were kicking off. I was like, what the heck? This VA, though, she had a family emergency. Somebody had gotten really sick in her family and she had to take a flight. And she's like, I don't know. And I said, so first thing I did was reach out to you and say, Matthew, I'm going to find somebody great and I'm going to expedite it and get it done quickly. And you were like, great, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and credit to you, Karen. So twice we've had things like this. Once it was a scheduling thing, and another was I had a miscommunication with Zach, which we got straightened out. We'll talk about in a minute. But both times, I thought you were going to show up at my house. Like, you were emailing me, you were texting me, you were calling me. I mean, this is a lesson for all of us. Like, when there's bad news, sometimes there's this temptation to say, I'll just send an email and I hope that they don't respond. And you're like, email, phone call, text message, phone call, email. Like, Matt, we have this issue, we have to solve it, and I'm not going to let it rest until it's solved.
No, that's because I get to know my client. Like, I want you to be happy. I want to make sure you're being served well. I want to make sure the belay is serving you well. So if anything comes across, I'm going to pick up the phone. And I'm old, Matthew, so I do not do email. I call first and then I text. A lot of clients want me to text them, but I do want to get on the phone and have a conversation. And I loved it. And I guess we'll talk about this later. But when something happened with Zach and you sent an email, I picked up the phone and I got your voice and I got to talk to you, and that was so awesome. So I appreciate you for doing that.
Yeah, well, since we're on that topic, so let's chat about this. So I think at that point I'd worked with Zach for a couple of months, and he was doing a great job. And there was a miscommunication around some of my travel. Some of that was on me, some of that was on Zach, but it was kind of this last minute thing. And so I had sent kind of I don't want to say an angry message. I didn't mean that way, but I was like, hey, listen, this happened and it's a big problem and it really can't happen again because my travel is so important. And then, as we just mentioned, Karen, you blew up my phone and my email, and we got on the phone, and there was no excuses were made. It was just like, let's figure out how this happened, and then what do we need to put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. It was such a lesson to me, right? Like you, I've been in this a long time, but to just how do I own this? Karen, other thoughts that you have though, when those that's because that's going to happen, right? That's inevitable. How do we learn from that versus whatever the outcome goes on?
Well, first of all, you gave Zach grace. But another thing I loved when that happened, Matthew, was I reached out to Zach after I spoke with you, and Zach 100% took ownership.
He did.
He was not saying, oh, well, no excuses. And that's when I know I've got a really good VA who is serving with excellence. They're going to take, they're going to say, yeah, that was an accident. It's not going to happen again. I would say onboarding, the biggest mistakes with clients when you don't provide feedback, and that starts right at onboarding, when you invest that time to communicate, get to know them, and then take some time to provide feedback. Sometimes that's really hard, but if you're not doing that, you're not building trust. Your VA doesn't feel they can provide feedback to you, and you're not giving it to them. And so it's not a really trusting relationship.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think part of that must also be knowing yourself, which speaks to the fit thing. So one of the things I said very early on with Zach is I said, hey, listen, man, at some point during our time working together, I'm going to have a week where I'm going to be in a bad mood or whatever. I'm going to think, what does Zach do around here? He probably doesn't do a darn thing. And so what I need you to do every week is just keep a running list of everything that you've done, which, by the way, for listeners, there's an example of that in my book. I had for a month, I recorded everything my VA did. But I just know myself. I know at some point, hey, I'm going to think, what does this person do? And we have a running spreadsheet. I can pull that back up and look at it. And Zach's great at that. And I think that's an interesting example, Karen, about you've got to give feedback all the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think to your point, a VA should always keep you updated on what's going on with hours, with tasks. There's a lot of reasons for that. You may want to pivot and have them doing something else. Yeah. So it's the transparency that's so important.
I want to come back to this. You mentioned, and again, shout out to Zach, which I'm sure he's listening to this, so it'll be great fun for his feedback, that he didn't make any excuses. And so how do you cultivate that? Because it's easy, right, to be like, oh, hey, Matt, this was really your fault. You didn't communicate. And I didn't communicate that well, by the way. But it's easy. So how do you guys filter out people who take ownership versus make excuses? And again, for our listeners, I want people to be aware of that. When you hire people that make excuses, that's what you're going to get all the time.
Yeah, I think the interview process, or what our contractors have to go through before they even get in the door at BELAY, is a lot of tests, a lot of interviews, skills tests, and then personality tests. So generally when I'm interviewing, I've already got somebody that's been through a lot of interviews. But I always ask those questions, like, how would you handle the situation? And I'm very big on making sure that people take ownership for what they do. When there's excuses, I think it's really hard to have that trust.
Oh, for sure. For sure it is. Another example on feedback that actually came up today. So today we're recording this, it's a Monday, and I was having my check-in meeting with Zach, and we were talking about my travel agent who was going to book a trip for me that was separate from what Zach was doing. And so I had told her via Zach, I said, here's the exact flights I want. And then she came back with, oh, here's these 2 other flights I'm going to book for you. And so I explained to Zach, I said, here's why this is an issue for me. I asked for something very specific and I need that. And if you would like to give me feedback, I would love that. If you want to say, Matt, here's the flights you requested and here's 4 other options I think you should consider, that would be great. But I just canceled her as my travel agent. I've got Zach taking care of that now because, and I just want to use that as a learning opportunity for Zach. Hey, when I make a request, there's probably a reason. Please push back on that, but make sure you do my request first and then push back on it. Don't abandon my request. Otherwise it kind of bothers me.
Oh gosh, absolutely. I mean, they should be serving you with excellence. And yeah, so I love that you hired Zach to do that.
Yeah, he already booked. I don't know why I didn't think about it to begin with. I'm doing an international travel. I'm going to London to speak in the fall, which is really fun. And so I thought, I better have my other person do it anyway. Karen, you've been the client success consultant for a lot of VAs, a lot of clients. What are some consistent themes you see on those relationships that work really well or the ones that don't work? So like you have to get involved a little more often?
The ones that work really well are the clients that are keeping their meetings with their VAs. So especially in the beginning, Matthew, it's not, as you guys kind of get into a rhythm and you get to know each other and that trust is built, you don't need to be meeting twice a week or, you might just meet once a week or twice a month. But it's in the initial onboarding when you're not spending the time, you're not communicating expectations, you're not providing feedback, you're not communicating. That's when the breakdown really happens. And then I think just understanding we're human. People are going to make mistakes, especially in the beginning. So giving that person a chance if they do make a mistake to right the mistake and hopefully not do it again.
Yeah.
So I'd say communication and onboarding and feedback are really important.
No, that's a good reminder. I remember with another VA, though Zach didn't make this mistake to his credit. With another VA I'd worked with before I met BELAY, I was getting on a flight. I travel all the time. I got on a flight and I was on a bulkhead row. And I'm a tall guy. I don't like the bulkhead row. And at first I was quite upset. I'm like, how did I end up on a bulkhead row? And then I remembered, I had never said, don't book a bulkhead row. Now, Zach, to his credit, went back and looked at my other trips. Before he started booking trips, he went back and looked to make sure Matt likes a window seat. He likes to sit in this row. I'll duplicate that. But that's kind of a simple example of course, we've got to invest time with this VA. They don't know your preferences unless you've communicated that to them.
That's right. And we actually, I don't know, Matthew, if we had this when you came to BELAY, but the client guidebook, did you have that?
That's right. That's how Zach knew. I was like, man, how does this guy always get my stuff right? That's right. I filled out that whole intro. Yes.
Yeah. So you guys are supposed to fill that out when you're kicking off with the client, and it has with the VA, and it has everything. Your travel preference, how you want your meetings set up every week. I mean, it's got your shoe size, which I don't know why that's in there, but but so yeah, that's where we learn so much about, VAs learn so much about their clients even before they kick off.
Another, as we're talking about recipes of success, I always want my VA to be empowered to look for opportunities I haven't seen. And so hopefully my wife hasn't listened to this episode, but some time ago at Mother's Day, Zach says, hey, dude, I'm sure you've got this handled, but it's Mother's Day next week. Was there anything I can do to help with that? And I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad you remembered. So Zach ordered flowers for my mom, for my mother-in-law, for my wife, for my grandma, just ordered flowers for everybody. Now, part of me thinks, hey, if I was a good son, grandson, father, whatever, I would take care of that. But then the rest of me realizes plan B was nothing. So plan A was Zach took care of it for me. Plan B, nothing happened. And so this is infinitely better than the other. So I think empowering your VA to look for those opportunities also really helps.
I love that, Matthew, because there's so much that they can do and they may see things that you don't even recognize. I have clients who'll be like, can they do this? Can they do that? I go, absolutely. Just ask them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, helping with travel and vacation and planning and personal stuff, our VAs do that all the time.
Yeah. And in fact, I've started with Mike, and now that we have our partnership with BELAY, we're now we have this competition about what can you delegate? Like, is there any limit to things that can be delegated? So I was thinking actually just last week, Zach got my car tinted. I want to get the windows tinted in my car. What else did he found a passport appointment, which is really hard these days to find a passport appointment. And so there's lots of things that I wish I had time to get to, but I just know that they're going to slip away. Karen, where else do you see recipes of success or recipes of failure when working with a VA?
I just think it's that trust. And I think it's a lot of times introducing your VA to your team. So they actually feel like they're a part of the organization and not just like they're an outside contractor. It really makes them feel like bought in. Include them in your weekly staff meetings. Because a lot of times they'll learn a lot about your company if they're in those staff meetings. And then just really trusting, letting that person handle your email means letting them see all of your email, not forwarding them email, but actually trusting that they're going to get it done.
That's an interesting one on team inclusion. I hadn't really thought about that one specifically, but you're right. It's sort of, you're bringing a new person to your team. Who is this person? Are they reliable, right? Like, so my existing teams, is Zach reliable? Is he going to do these things? How do I get a hold of him? Is he a nice person to talk to? That's a really great idea to really make that an intentional part of the process. Karen, talk to us a little bit more about email delegation. This is something that buries a lot of people. Delegating, how have people done that successfully? You know, there's these concerns like emails are going to get lost or they're private or whatever else. What are your thoughts there?
The best or the most successful that I've seen it happen is just when a client says, I'm going to let you handle it. You're the expert. I'm going to onboard and share my screen. I'm going to show you when you see an email from this person, I need to respond within 24 hours.
Sure.
I've got VAs that respond for their clients. They are just sending drafts and putting it in a draft folder so that the client can go in there and just hit send or just review it and then hit send. I mean, it's just, there's so much that can be done. And you guys get so bogged down with email that this is the number one thing, that just take it off the plate and trust. Trust on email is not going to be built in a day, though. It's something that's going to take a while. And I'm saying like 30 days, maybe, where you're feeling like, okay, this person's got it. I don't even need to look at my email. I know that whatever email I need to respond to, they're going to alert me in the morning. Like it's handled.
Yeah, and I think there's some great framework to put around that. I liked your idea of the draft things, right? So you could say for that first week or period of time, and we'll use Zach as an example. I say, Zach, any emails you need to respond to, go ahead and put them in a draft folder, and each morning I'll look at them. And so that would be sort of phase one. Now for Zach and I, we're at the point where I just say, great, if there's an email that you're not sure about, or if there's an email where you feel like I need to take action on, let me know and I'll take care of that one. And again, I liked your idea, Karen. In fact, even those ones, go ahead and draft a response and I'll jump in there. But it's so easy to spot check, right? If I'm nervous, I can go back through the sent file. I can say, Zach, make me a list of the emails you've responded to, and I can double check that, right? It's unlikely he could do anything that would be catastrophic, not someone of his caliber.
No, and I haven't had, I can't think of really big mess ups with email. I see more mess ups when the client's afraid to let it go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's why they've hired Belay, and we have expert VAs. That's what they're good at. Let them handle it.
Something else that I found really good with delegating email, if you're unsure about that, is I'll have Zach and Colleen, my other assistants in my other companies, they'll respond and they'll say, hey, this is Colleen. Matt asked me to explain the following. Now, I didn't word for word say the following. They just know what my approach is to that. So, hey, this is Colleen. Matt asked me to respond with, let you know the following. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be watching his email account. So they're not ever responding impersonating me. They're not saying, hey, this is Matt, da-da-da. They're saying, hey, this is Colleen. Matt asked me to tell you this, that, or the other. And that's been really successful. And for me, it gives me a little bit of peace of mind because I know there's a barrier. I was like, oh, you know what? Colleen misunderstood that. That's very rare, but she misunderstood that. We have some place to go there.
Absolutely. And it's done all kinds of different ways, Matthew. That's a great way to do it. Again, I think the draft, when the VAs, a lot of clients get so many emails and then they get overwhelmed. And so they let them sit there. Yeah. And some of my clients will say, if they just have started a draft, even if I know it's not going to be correct, it'll get me to send it because they've started it and I can finish it and send it out.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of us get stuck staring at a blank sheet of paper, right? Or a blank email. So you put the bullet points in, put the whatever, that's super helpful. And even things like deleting out spam. I hate that I have to pay somebody to clear out the crap out of my email box, but that's just the world that we live in. Even with SaneBox and the best spam filters, a lot of just junk still goes through. And so when I do go into my email account, which I try to only do once a week, it's only the things I need to address because Zach is taking care of everything else. And it just saves that mental clutter from my mind.
I love that. You go in your email once a week.
Yeah. The email accounts that Zach takes care of. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, because it's a black hole, right? For me, I just like, oh, let me look at this one and let me unsubscribe from that. And I just can't spend time there.
It's a waste of your time when you could be doing what you're really good at.
Yeah, have you seen some of these studies about email, Karen? They say that some people are spending 2 to 4 hours a day managing email, and then you look and say, no wonder nothing's getting done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's spending that time on business strategy, meeting with your leadership team, meeting with clients, and you're wasting it on email. Yeah.
So Karen, we talked about the once a week meetings or a couple times a week. What about more urgent correspondence, right? So what are kind of your thoughts there? Where have you seen success? Let's say Zach sees an email come in that's more urgent, or I have a random thought. I mean, how do we balance this? I don't want to be interrupting him all the time. I don't want him interrupting me all the time, but some things are urgent.
Oh gosh, yeah. And what I love about Belay and our model is if your VA should respond to you within an hour to two.
Okay.
If it's urgent and it could be a minute. But you're never waiting to see, did they get what I sent? It's a quick response. And so when you build that relationship, I mean, that person should know there's so many different avenues that our clients use, Slack or text or whatever works best for the client, the VA will use. But if that comes in, then if they're able to do it, I mean, I can't say that 100% of the time they're going to be able to jump on something,
Sure.
but we're very quick at responding. Our VAs are very quick. I really don't have that issue with clients because they know that you've got an hour to two to respond. And if it's urgent and you've built that trust, then you can be expecting them to respond quickly.
Yeah, well, I love that. It's about managing the expectation. Something interesting, Karen, that Zach and I have started doing, I don't even know if we've told you this yet. I recently was introduced to, everybody's talking about AI these days, which I'm not even really sure what that means, but it's the big thing to talk about. So there's a service called Fireflies, and we have it record all of our meetings that Zach and I have together, and it makes a transcription and it summarizes the meeting. So what I discovered in these meetings is I go really fast through a lot of things, and Zach's taking all these notes and he's got a couple more questions. And a couple of things were getting missed, not Zach's fault. I was just going too fast. So now we have started recording those and having them transcribed. And then Zach can go back through and search. So he says, oh, I'm going back to book this flight. And Matt said a couple things about that flight, but he said 100 other things. And now he's searching through the transcript to find, oh, London trip. Oh, here's what we talked about. So that's allowed our success rate to go way up because he's not just trying to rely on his memory of our meeting. So I thought kind of an interesting.
Wow, that's really awesome. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm surprised I haven't heard a lot of clients talking about that, but I'm sure I will soon. You're on the forefront of that one.
Somebody else introduced it to me. So
I love it.
Karen, what are a couple other, it's crazy, this time is just flying by and we're having so much fun here, but what are a couple other things or any other big takeaways that you recommend when someone's trying to find an EA or they're working with their EA, just things that you say, like, please don't do this thing. Like, don't screw this thing up.
Well, with finding VAs, I have heard clients come to us and they'll be like, yeah, I was using my wife's best friend who needed some work. I'm like, no, find somebody who is an expert. I'd recommend Belay, obviously, but find somebody who's an expert, but not only that, somebody who has a passion for serving others, because in the role as a VA, you have to have a passion for serving others or you're not going to succeed. So you really have to have that.
That's a really good one. Yeah. So because you had mentioned earlier, they don't make any excuses. And then that passion for serving others. I have had a VA I worked with in the past before I knew Belay. And now that I think back on, like, it just didn't ever work quite right. And for this person, there wasn't that passion. Everything was sort of like this burden. Every time I delegate something, like, oh, all right, I'll take care of that too. Like, no, I need you to, when I get the phone with Zach, he's like, wow, you have another thing for me? That's amazing. Do you have anything else you can? Yeah, I do. Here you go.
Oh my gosh, Zach loves you. But yeah, I mean,
we have fun.
Yeah, when there's not a passion and they're just doing a task for you, they're not bought in. If it's just a task and they don't have, I always say, I want to find a VA who's got Matthew's back, somebody that cares enough that they're going to make sure that Matthew is a success. And to do that, they have to have a passion for serving.
Yeah, boy, that's a great point. We'll have to do a whole episode on that because a dozen examples come to mind. But Karen, it's been great having you on the show. But let's make sure we get some action items. This podcast is about taking action, right? Talking about VAs doesn't help anybody. What are some action items that come to mind for you as we think about virtual assistants?
Okay, so I'm going to give you 4 action items for your clients.
Right. Ooh, I like this. Okay.
Okay, the first one is make a list. Make a list of all the things that you are currently doing that you should not be doing. Managing email, calendar, travel. Also include in that list, like you did, Matthew, things that you wish you could do, but you don't have time, like researching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class or planning a vacation for your family. Yeah. Once you've done that, the next thing you want to do is find somebody who's an expert, which I just said. Find somebody who's actually an expert at doing those things and somebody who has a passion for serving. And then the third thing is take the time to onboard that person, build that trust, have that communication, provide feedback. And then the fourth thing is once you've done all that, let it all go. Do what you're really good at. Work on your business strategy, mentor your leadership team, meet with your clients more. And I think you'll be much happier if you're doing this.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's a great, You know what, Karen, I think from now on, I'm going to just ask you to write the action items for all my podcasts. These are really good. I'm just going to add one fifth one on there, which is as part of our partnership with BELAY, there's some great resources that are available to our listeners. So if you text the letters RIA, like a registered investment advisor, RIA, to the number 55123, you'll get an access to a great ebook that BELAY has put together. So they'll send that to you. And then be sure to mention us when you talk to BELAY. So they'll be like, yes, we should keep working with the Perfect RIA. So Karen, thank you so much, both for being on the podcast and for being my client success consultant. It's been a lot of fun working together. And for all of our listeners, until next time, happy planning.